Good evening and welcome. I'm Roy Blitzer, and our show is Ask Dr. Business. The purpose of our time together is to give you information and insight that will help make your work world a little bit more satisfying. The desired outcome is you're going to take the information and put it to good use so your work world will become interesting, exciting, and rewarding. We are continuing our series on jobs that require travel. And as you can see, I'm sitting here by myself. I do not have a guest tonight. And yes, you guessed it, my guest is traveling. Last minute, I got a phone call that he had been called away to an emergency to India and had to cancel his commitment. I decided to keep the show going because I think it's a good example of what it's like when you're traveling for business. Some of the commitments that you make for your outside world are often second shrifted. They're trumped by your office work. I'm still here to answer some of your questions, and what I'm going to do is give you a summary of what the previous guests have told me about their world of business travel. The phone number here is 650-856-1491. Well, when we begin our show, I usually spend some time with my talent asking them a series of questions to make sure that the show is interesting and exciting. And one of the questions I ask is how they have had jobs that have traveled. The guests that we've had so far, one of them has been traveling for the 20 years of the career. And at one point, they were gone basically 18 months, 500,000 miles. They were gone constantly. Another colleague has been traveling since they began their career and also does maybe 40%. Now, when I was in business, I traveled maybe from Monday to Friday twice a month maybe, or once every other month. So it was considered 20% travel, and at the time, it was hardly a trial, but it was not an easy situation because I had a young family at the time. Well, one of the things I ask is about jet lag, and I heard several different tips about how to deal with jet lag. First, many people who don't need a lot of sleep do much better than those of us who like a full 8 hours when they're traveling on the job. Some people take Ambien to get a good solid 4 hours of sleep. Some people take other melatonin. Some people don't drink coffee. Some people don't drink any liquor when they're on the airplane. The tip is it really depends on your own body rhythm and what your schedule is like when you get to the place of origin or when you get to the place where you're starting. For example, if you're traveling back east and you're leaving California, you're 3 hours behind. So if you have an 8 o'clock meeting, that means you need to be up at 4 o'clock or 3:30 in the morning to get yourself ready to make that 8 o'clock meeting. So one little piece of advice is schedule your meetings late in the morning for the first day that you're traveling. Another little piece of advice is do your best to stay on the time of the place where you are. Change your watch immediately and do your best to try to get sunlight. According to the research, sun is a very important way of keeping you awake and alert. The other question that came up with one of our callers was how do you handle exercise? Let's say you're traveling to Asia and you're on the plane for 13 to 16 hours. Many of my guests have been wearing those sup-hose that help with varicose veins and pressure in your legs. Others always recommend wearing special shoes just for the airplane or fluffy socks or something where your feet are comfortable. Getting up, walking up and down the aisle, doing some sit-ups, some kind of exercise, if you can, will keep you alert. Other tips came from individuals who, when they got to their destination, would immediately jog, even if it was nighttime. They would jog so they'd get some exercise to go to sleep. The other thing that's very interesting about jet lag is that it really depends on how many hours you're behind or ahead of yourself. It's very difficult to go to a place and be behind, but it may be even worse when you come home. Another question that came up that was something of interest that may be for our audience is, what do you do about packing? How do you handle being away for 2 weeks at a time or a week at a time? What do you pack? How do you arrange for the different kinds of meetings you might have? Before I give you that tip, let me see if I can get a caller here. The phone number is 650-856-1491. I'm here by myself, summarizing some of the points that came from our series on jobs that require travel. Well, first of all, it was almost universal that you should not check your luggage. Carry-on luggage only. And if you can, do your best to pack as lightly as possible. One of my colleagues has a packing list and keeps that available to make sure that you need the things that you have with you. Rolling versus flat. Many of my colleagues have recommended that you roll your clothing so you don't have to worry about them getting wrinkled. Bring one pair of shoes that can go with absolutely everything. Make sure that you can wear your outfit more than once if you're seeing different people. If you're away a long time, it may be worth an extra $1 or $2 to have the hotel take your stuff to a laundry. However, know where you're going. Is it a tie and jacket place? Are you going to Asia where looking formal is more important? Or are you going to a high-tech company in Boston that doesn't care if you're dressed casually? But make sure that you have at least one other alternate outfit with you. One pair of shoes, wearing things more than once, rolling your information, and keeping your passport and your tickets in the same place in your pocket or your suitcase all the time. If you're traveling where it requires you to need your content information all the time, make a copy of your passport and put it somewhere different so you have a protection in case it gets lost or someone might rip you off, etc. So the packing is an issue, and also the fact that when you ask my colleagues about horror stories, they're always somehow related to the airport or the airplane. And this is before the guy got yanked off the plane in United Airlines. One thing that came across that was very interesting and important is if your plane is canceled and you need to make another reservation, it's faster to do that on your cell phone than trying to run to the customer service desk to have them book you, because then you're competing with the other 300 people who are on your airplane. So use the phone as a way to make your change of reservations. We have a caller. Frank, this is Dr. Business. How can I help you?
Dr. Business, I have a question about how you handle language barriers and cultural differences when traveling abroad for business.
I really like that. Let's see if I can answer that from my own experience, but believe it or not, that did not come up in the previous shows that we've had. First, I think it's important that you learn a few catchphrases of the country you're going to, using John F. Kennedy as an example. Ich bin Berliner. I am a Berlin person. He won lots of friends by having 3 words before he gave his speech. Learning a few pieces of language will help you. Carrying a little pocket dictionary is another option. And if you possibly can, and your company can do that for you, having a translator is something else that's very important. If you're going to a foreign country, Frank, where the customs are different, for in Japan, when you give your business card, you open your hand and bow. Some organizations run cultural training programs, so you could learn some of the customs in the country you're going to be able to fit in and be much more comfortable at the host country where you are. I always think it's important that you bring a gift. If we live in San Francisco Bay Area, bringing some chocolate, Ghirardelli chocolate, bringing a mug with the Golden Gate Bridge on it. Bringing something to your host is a wonderful way to break the language barrier and to help with the cultural differences. And try your best not to do anything that's offensive. Did that help with your question, Frank?
That helped so much. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your making the contact, and thanks so much, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
Okay, let's begin the train of thought about what happens on the airplane. We talked a little bit about what you do to get some exercise. My recommendation is use that time as a combination of relaxation and getting work done. Depending on the nature of your job, if you have a laptop or a phone, you can do your email, you can do some correspondence, and you also can really relax. You can read a book, you can watch a movie. I would take your airplane time as a way to prepare yourself for the rigors of your trip. Now, one of the advantages of doing lots of business travel is if you use the same airline. That was one of my pieces of advice from one of the vice presidents who was on the road constantly. He always used the same airline. That gave him very high travel status. So every time his name came up in the computer, he would basically get good seating. And again, depending on how your company runs the organization, some firms only let you fly coach. But if you fly coach and you fly a lot of coach, you can actually pick one of the seats that is a bulk seat and worth the extra $25. Another thing, if you're making your own travel arrangements, some organizations work with a travel company, other people like doing it themselves. According to one of my guests, the best time to make your reservation in California is Tuesday evening. That's when you have the chance to get the most seats and the most opportunity to get the flight that you want. Another tip, if you're flying to Chicago, where there's snowstorms constantly, even though you're eager to get to your destination, try not to cut the connection too short. If you cut the connection too short, you're liable to miss your connection because of bad weather, and you'll never get to the meeting, and you've lost all that time. So, same carrier, trying to figure out how to maximize the best seat, getting exercise, and again, try not to drink. I think alcohol in the air can be absolutely disastrous. The other thing that's very important is if you have a bad back, you can bring one of those portable back rests to put on the seat for you. You can also use one or two of the pillows that come with the airplane. The thing that's most important about the flight is to make sure that you travel, if you can, on the first flight out of SFO or San Jose. That means the chances of that flight going are very high. Now, there's a chance the crew isn't there or the equipment is not right, but if you're waiting for another plane, that just increases the chance of your not making your connection or the appointment you have at the other end. Amy, this is Dr. Business. How can I help you?
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering how people with families handled a job where they traveled.
Amy, I'm glad you brought that up. I wish one of my daughters was here to talk what it was like when Dad was away. First of all, there is a huge disadvantage when you have children and you're not there. You can miss soccer games and plays that the kids have a starring role, or even as much as a poetry reading or something important for your child. The way to manage that a little more positively is try to get as much advance notice of the opportunities you have at home to try to work your plans around that. Also, if you can, try to get home on the weekends. The other thing I used to do is I used to write little notes and save them and have my wife put them in their lunch boxes so they would get a chance to have a little humor from me during the day. I try to call at least once an evening to say hello. And now that we have texting and Snapchat and all the other ways you can communicate, FaceTime, you can try to connect with your kids as much as you can, say goodnight, read them a story, but it is a very big trial if you're gone a lot. One of my guests, we used to be gone for 2 weeks at a time, and he missed a lot of opportunities. Look at the young man that had to fly to India. This has been on the books for a full month, and he had to change his plans immediately. The other thing about family is if you tell your colleagues at home that your travel schedule, and you can give it to them, they can try their best to schedule important events when you're there. It also occurred to me that when you are gone, it's not only that your family suffers, the nonprofit board director that you're trying to help, the special meeting that you need to be at. It is a very taxing time to be away. Amy, did that answer your question satisfactorily?
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, good luck to you, and I'm pleased you made the call. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here. Ask Dr. Business, jobs that require travel. And I'm on my own tonight, summarizing some of the information that people have given me that I can pass on to you. My travel experience is old. It was pre-9/11. It was pre-internet access. So it's a little bit old, though the circumstances may be the same. One of the questions that I asked my guests, what are some of the perks of business travel? Now, here's what I heard back. Many of the perks come if your organization lets you keep your miles. If you get to keep your miles, then you can use that for family travel. Although I was once on a vacation with a fellow who was a pilot who never wanted to take a vacation. He was sick of being on an airplane. But if you're traveling on business, you may use those miles to go on a family vacation. Another thing, you can take an extra half a day or a day when you're gone and do something just for yourself. Go to a museum, see a Broadway show, take in a site that you normally would not get to see if you're a city that has something that might have an offering to your liking. Next, experiment with food. You can try local dishes. You can experiment with trying things that you wouldn't get at home to make the experience a little better. One of my colleagues mentioned that when she goes to a place and sees an experience that she thinks her family might like, they put that as a place they may want to go together as a unit. Also, you can make friends. You have a chance, if you're gone a lot, to connect with the people that you interact with. They can come to visit you in the Bay Area, and you can actually go back to see them. So there are some perks of the travel, but mostly using the miles for your other family activities, experimenting with food, meeting new people, and other sites. I want to remind you that you can still call in. The phone number is 650-856-1491, and I'm giving some advice and summarizing from the people who have been on our show before, since the travel situation with my planned guest trumped our appearance this evening. One of the other questions is, what advice would you give to someone who is taking a job that has travel? My first piece of advice is to find out how realistic the job has been positioned. If the job posting or the job description says 40%, you can be sure it's more than 40%. What does 40% mean to this company? Find out if that means you're gone 2 weeks out of the month, or that means you're gone 1 month. You need to find out what it means so you can alert your family, your friends, of what that is going to do to either your relationship or the situations when you are at home. One of the other pieces of advice that was given was the whole concept of trying to negotiate how handling decisions will be made while you're gone, i.e., dual partnerships, relationships where you share responsibilities. Something's liable to go wrong. The refrigerator could die. You might need a new roof, leak repaired. If the person at home is in charge, you may be willing to delegate that decision to him or her. Even though you have access, very often you're not going to be available when the time comes to make that decision. So decision making, actual time of what the travel means and whether it was realistically portrayed for you. Next, what happens if your job involves so much travel that you're basically wanting to change the situation? Well, there are certain positions, marketing jobs, sales management jobs, jobs where you have to visit customers, where that's the nature of the work. And you're going to have to figure out what is your threshold. How long do you need to be away before things rupture at home or your personal exhaustion level is so high that you're needing to have a change? Next, how has business travel changed from when I used to do a lot of traveling to when my guests did? The major issue is security, time at the airport. Everyone recommend that you go and get the special federal, I can't remember the name, where you pay $100 and you get through security faster. That is one time saver. Next, also be sure that your status at the security will enable you to also get through customs faster, to get through immigration faster, so that the time that you would spend on the administrative chores of traveling are lessened. It is no longer get to the airport 40 minutes before jumping on the plane. You've got to be there in enough time. Next, the other thing that came up consistently is the concept of what do you do when you miss appointments, when your airplane misses the key meeting that you have to be at, or when you're stranded someplace and you can't get to your next destination. And the issues that were resolved is you need to be flexible. If you have a job that requires travel, you need to be loose or loosen up, because there are so many things that can go wrong that are beyond your control that you'll tie yourself into knots if you don't figure out a way how to handle all the possibilities. And if your job is so dependent on the travel and you don't like to travel, then I don't think I would take the job in the beginning, because it's coming to roost that the people that like these jobs have a sense of adventure. They're flexible, they're adventurous, they enjoy new things, and they like having new experiences. That makes it ideal. And as young Amy asked, your family will have to be able to acknowledge the sacrifices that you're going to make and they're going to make. My personal feeling is that if you give enough advance notice and you can tell that child, I'm not going to be here for opening night, but I will be here for closing night of your play, that is a little more easy to handle than missing the entire production. Another, I think, fascinating thing about business travel is that now that it's a global society, you can eliminate some travel. You now have Zoom, you now have Skype, you now have Meeting Maker. You have options to make your meetings electronically and save yourself a trip. When I was going on the road, you didn't have that option. You needed that face-to-face contact. Another thing that's made it a little bit easier is the communication with home. All we had before was the phone. And I used to leave little notes for their lunchbox and under their pillows and stuff like that. But the reality is nowadays, with smartphones, you can literally be much more connected than you could have been 10, 15 years ago. Well, we have just a few more minutes, and I will solicit one more call if it's possible, 650-856-1491. I'm hoping you've garnered a few little tips on what it's like for business travel, but the thing that it's most important that I will leave you with as a summary of all of our guests, most of the people that have been on our show love traveling. They were not the least bit wigged out by all of the things that may have disturbed many people. And they have realized that it's getting tougher. Travel used to be lots of fun. Now it requires planning, it requires lots of sophisticated legwork, and if you're fortunate enough to do enough travel where you can go to the first class lounge, where you can get upgraded to better seats, it has several perks to it that you normally would not get as the regular person getting on an airplane. Now, what's going to happen next? The show series will continue. I'm having a guest on May 18th who will be talking about the travel he has to do to Asia. And my final show, I'm going to be having a couple. A man who is a marketing guy who travels all the time, who's married to an attorney who travels all the time. And I'm going to be fascinated to see how they manage their lives when both of them are gone a lot. Now, I believe they are child-free, so they haven't got the issues of who's going to get the kid to soccer practice or how you're going to get to the music lesson. But in general, they have to coordinate that. I want to let you know that our show is closing. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank the callers. And I even want to thank my guest who was called away to India. Good luck. This is Dr. Business signing off, and I look forward to hearing your questions on May 18th. Take care, and that's the end of our show.